Hey everybody, it is Mike. It is Saturday. That means it's time for the Horrorman's Saturday Slashback Challenge. This week's challenge dealt with traveling, so it could be a horror or a slasher that deals with, being on a trip or traveling, or maybe it has an automobile or something in it. So I decided that I was going to do a review on a movie that has a vehicle that's actually a killer. Um, it may not be able to actually slash, but it sure does a lot of damage to people. So I went with 1977's The Car. The 70s was an interesting time for killer vehicle movies. We also had the one with Stephen King did called Duel. Um, with the semi truck, and I cannot remember the name of the guy that's in that one, but I have that movie as well. It's a lot of fun. They did Death Wish 2000 in the 70s, and then eventually we got Christine and Maximum Overdrive and all these other ones. The Car is a little bit different than most of them in that there's nobody behind the wheel of this car. This car is just straight up possessed by something, and it gets an attitude, and it just decides to kill people. So it was made in '77. Stars Jim Brolin, aka Mr. Barbra Streisand, um, and Ronnie Cox. Really, nobody else in that movie was that big of a star. So it's an interesting movie in that the setting is very cool. It's set out in the desert, so there's a lot of dirt and dust flying around. They actually used some American Indian actors in the movie, which I thought was really cool. Although not too PC right now, because he called this one guy, this drunk, abusive guy, calls him a filthy beast. The one police officer that's an Indian, and he calls him a dirty Indian, and yeah. So yeah, that wouldn't go over real well in today's society, but what does? So, plot of this movie: we have this little town out in the middle of the desert. Okay, so it's not really close to any big cities, and for some reason, this black car, it's a matte black, so it's not like this shiny, beautiful black car. It's a beautiful car, um, but it it's possessed. It wants to kill people. So the movie starts out with some beautiful scenery shots, and then you see this black car kind of come out of nowhere. Of course, it's very loud, and this really weird wind follows it. Very strong wind. It surrounds this car, so as it's coming up to somewhere, it gets really windy. Um, and then we have um, the horn. The horn is so loud that it can shatter windows. So start out, we have a couple bicyclers. Actually, the female bicycler is still on The Young and the Restless, I believe. Melody Thomas played. I think it's Nikki. I can't remember her name on Young and the Restless. I never really watched that show, but I know she's on there. Um, and then her and her boyfriend are bicycling, and this car just decides that it's going to take these two kids out, and that's what it does. It basically runs them off the road and kills them. So, yeah. And then we have another scene where um, then it just drives off. It honks its horn the whole time, of course, terrifying these kids, and um, it continues. And then we have the abusive couple. The a drunk guy, I guess he has an explosive business, and he's awful to his wife and beats his wife. And the sheriff really feels for her because he knew her. She was like his first real love. Um, and there's a hitchhiker sitting uh, by the town sign, and he's playing a French horn. And this guy is sitting there and just enjoying the day, waiting for maybe somebody to come by to give him a ride. He's hitching home to New York, and this is set in Utah. So he's hitching home, and he sees this man slapping his wife around, and he kind of steps in and says, "Hey, stop it!" And the abusive guy gets really hot and says, "Don't tell me what to do. Um, shut up, get off my property, whatever." So the guy's like, "Okay." So he gets ready and he sees this car coming for him, or coming up the road, and he's thinking, "Yeah, I got a ride." Thinks it's a girl. He's all excited, and then it's the car, and the abusive husband sees. I think his name is. I can't remember his name. Um, Sees what happens to this hitchhiker, because the car flies past him and tries to run him over, and it pisses the hitchhiker off, so the hitchhiker flips him off and cusses at the car, and it hurts the car's feelings, so the car goes after him. Needless to say, takes care of him. So the drunk sees this happening, but he tries to explain to the cops what happened. So there's this whole melodrama going on, and we have James Brolin character has a girlfriend named Lauren. Ronnie Cox's character has a girlfriend. Ronnie Cox is a recovering alcoholic. He's been sober for 2 years, so there's that. That all comes into play. And then, of course, the main sheriff, the chief, is in love with the battered woman. Tries to get her to leave her husband. That doesn't work. So they all end up in the same cop shop talking about what's going on, and nothing ever happens in this town. So the fact that there's 3 dead people within a day is pretty difficult for them all. And Ronnie Cox's character is starting to break a little bit. So then the sheriff goes out, or the chief of police goes out to try to make sure that abusive guy is not beating on his wife, because she just ran out of the cop shop back to him. She takes off, and then all of a sudden there's the black car, and it takes off like it's going towards the drunk, but then at the last minute it swerves, the drunk jumps out of the way, and it runs over the chief of police, which sends Ronnie Cox's character all over the edge, and he ends up getting drunk, which becomes a problem because then he can't do his job right. So then the car continues, it kills some cops, it terrorizes a group of kids and teachers that are doing a little band concert, or practice, marching band. That's where this wind really plays a part in this movie. It's blowing dust and everything into the kids' faces. The sheriff's 2 daughters are a part of that parade practice. So, there's all kinds of mayhem. So they all end up running away from the car, and then the car kind of breaks through, and they go up, and they go into this old Indian burial ground, an old cemetery, and the car won't go into it. So that's your first hint that there may be something up with that car. Also, during an interview with one of the women after this whole thing took place, the James Brolin character was talking to an old Indian woman, and she was speaking in her native language, which would have been any American Indian's native language, I guess. They all had their own, but so she was talking to the Indian cop, and she said some stuff, and the Indian cop didn't exactly tell the chief, Jim Brolin's character, what was going on. Chief Parent is his name. So later on, there's an Indian police officer, a little female, and she tells him that what that lady said was there was nobody driving that car. There was nobody in the car was driving itself. Well, Jim Brolin doesn't believe that. still thinks it's a person. For a while, they think it's the guy on the bike because they found the girl first. But that turns out not to be true because they eventually find the boy. Um, then we have some chase scenes. We have the girlfriend. Probably the hardest part of the movie for me was when James Brolin's girlfriend gets killed because this car literally comes right for her house. She's outside of her house. She gets dropped off. She's going to stay overnight with his daughters because he was injured. When the car killed all the cops, it also took him out. But he was injured, so he had to stay in the hospital. She was going to stay with the daughters. The One of the officers dropped her off at her house to get her things and was going to take her to the sheriff's house. He made a quick trip to check on his family, and during that time, the wind picked up, and then she could hear the car. She was on the phone with James Brolin's character, and she was saying, that wind came up, and she's like, I can hear the engine. I can hear that. And as you're watching her talk on the phone, you see the headlights coming towards the window, and then all of a sudden, it's right there. The horn starts blaring. She screams, and it crashes right through her house. I mean, completely through the house, killing her, which was sad because I liked her character. But when they were in the cemetery, she was cussing at him and calling him all kinds of names and telling him to get out of the car. Well, I guess this car has thin skin because it doesn't like getting called names. So eventually, what's left of the police, the abusive old guy with the explosives company, rig a trap, and all kinds of chase scenes and craziness takes place. A great explosion, some really bad 70s special effects. At the end, as the car is allegedly blowing up, you see like a demon's face or some kind of growly thing, whatever. Of course, Jim Brolin doesn't believe it, and he just says it's over, it's over. But the movie ends with that car driving in Los Angeles or some city. I'm assuming, I don't know. But it's a fun movie. And that car is a slasher because he gets mad and he goes after people who makes fun of him. So, Michael wasn't a big fan of people saying stuff about him or, whatever. So, yeah, it's a slasher. Whether you like it or not, I'm calling it a slasher. All right, so that's my Saturday Slashback challenge. Hope everybody is well, and y'all take care.